Hey guys, I'm Sage Valentine and I'm back here to review another episode of AMC's The Walking Dead. This time it's all about Season 7, Episode 13, entitled Bury Me Here, so let's just get down to it. You guys ready? Here goes. When the episode opens up, we see the Knights, Ezekiel and Morgan, loading up one of the trucks because obviously they're on their way to meet up with Gavin and Jared and the other saviors to give them the supplies to give to the sanctuary, or Negan to be exact. So it's kind of weird that they're only packing up one melon. Now, I had to watch this scene 2 times to really soak in what was going on, and I realized that everybody looked sad and Ben was nowhere to be seen. Another scene pops up whereas Carol is having bad dreams or night terrors or something, and she wakes up and she looks really upset. So she initially leaves her house, starts walking, and she feels like somebody is watching her. And someone is watching her. It's Richard. He's up to no good, digging some sort of grave for some reason, or a hole or something. I'm like, what the hell is this dude doing? And please don't say that he's doing what Jim did in the first season and going crazy and thinking everybody's going to die again. But anyway, Carol ends up killing a bunch of walkers using a speed limit sign, which was really cool. Really cool scene and awesome deaths for the walkers. So she goes back into the kingdom and she's talking to Morgan and she asks him what the heck happened at Alexandria. He doesn't feel comfortable with telling her, and I don't blame him. And he's basically like, you know what? If you want to know, you should ask Daryl. He explains that Jesus and the Alexandria crew showed up to the kingdom because they wanted to see if they could work together with the kingdom. He doesn't say anything more about that, but he does offer to walk Carol to Alexandria, and he asks her what's getting away from everyone, what she really wanted, and to me it doesn't look like it. So Carol doesn't want Morgan's help. Ben comes up and as she's leaving, and he offers help for Carol. He wants to walk with her. He wants to learn from her, and she doesn't want his help either. And for some reason, on a side note, this scene reminded me of when Carol was interacting with little Sam, Jesse's son, back in season 5 and in the beginning of season 6. So I already knew that Ben's days were numbered, but I did not think he would die the way that he died. Like, I figured he'd be eaten by some walkers or something, or shot in battle. I never fathomed that he would be shot the way that he was shot. And unfortunately, if Ben had been talking with Carol and training with Carol, he would not have been present at that drop and wouldn't have been shot. Does that mean that I blame Carol for that? Heck no, because that's all Richard. All of that is Richard. The kingdom looks so peaceful. Everybody's happy. And then we see Ezekiel standing on what looks like a second floor balcony or something with Shiva. And Shiva's just chilling because she's so beautiful. And this girl named Nabila pops up. She is a heavy-set black girl. She's Muslim and she wears a hijab and coveralls. So one can assume that she works in the garden. So I'm looking at Nabila and I'm like, you know, there's some significance to this character. There's more to her than this exchange with Ezekiel where she talks about how she's afraid of Shiva and how there's a weevil infestation and they have to cut everything in the garden and burn everything that they cannot retrieve before they do the cutting and burning. Basically the food that hasn't been touched by the weevils. So this scene made me realize there's something about Nabila, but what is it is the question. So let's get down to this mess with Richard, because I knew eventually it was about to go down, and by it I mean eventually karma was coming, because Richard would not stop running his mouth and engaging with this savior, Jared. So I knew eventually Richard was going to die in some way, shape, or form. So Richard and the crew are traveling on the road because they have to deliver melons to the saviors. They have to deliver 12 of them. All of a sudden, there's some sort of roadblock made by a whole bunch of carts, and it's in the shape of an arrow. And it's pointing straight towards this empty grave with no markings on it. Well, I mean, there is a marking, but there's no, like, gravestone. There's, like, a big sign that says, "Bury me here," or something. So this whole situation slows down the Knights of the Kingdom because they're trying to figure out what the hell happened. Meanwhile, Richard is acting like he doesn't know what's going on. He distracts them and he takes one of the melons and he hides it. Okay, by the time they make it to the meet, Gavin's already pissed off. All of a sudden, guns come out and Gavin basically makes Ezekiel and the Knights give up their guns. A lot of people on Twitter were upset and they were like, why is Ezekiel giving in to Gavin and blah, 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 because Ezekiel doesn't want bad blood with the, I was going to say the kingdom, with the saviors. So I don't blame him for doing what he did. So the crew's already late to this meet. Gavin's pissed off. The other saviors are pissed off. Then come to find out they are one melon short of what they were required to bring. Ezekiel's like, freaking out, like, I counted this, like, how the hell is there a melon, you know, missing? And all of a sudden it comes time for somebody to pay the piper, and Gavin basically tells Jared to do the honor of shooting somebody. So he puts the gun in Richard's face. I'm like, all right, Richard's gonna die. He's probably going to die, but then again, because of the way this season has been going, whenever you think somebody's going to die, somebody else is going to die. And all of a sudden, Jared moves his gun over Richard's shoulder, fires a shot, the screen goes black, and we hear Morgan scream out, "No." Come to find out, poor Ben got shot in the leg. And a lot of people are like, if he got shot in the leg, then why is he dying? Because he got shot in an artery, not a vein. So if he got shot in a vein, he would have bled out, but it would have been easier to stop the bleeding. Unfortunately, when you get hit or nick an artery, especially the main artery in your body, it just bleeds and bleeds and bleeds till you die. So the group basically had to rush back after talking to Gavin, because Gavin was like, you guys need to straighten up and fly right. You better come here tomorrow with him one melon. No excuses, no more, no less. It better be one melon. That's it. Or pretty much somebody else is going to die. But Gavin seemed very upset that Ben had been shot. I guess he figured that Jared was going to shoot Richard, but he shot Ben, and I think that he shot Ben not only because of Richard's stupidity, but also because of Ben's comment to Jared calling him a rat-faced prick. But Ben wasn't lying, so anyway. Ben ended up bleeding to death on Carol's kitchen table because her house was literally the first place they could make it to, and Carol had all of the medical supplies in her house. But there was nothing that they could do because poor Ben bled out. Morgan was upset, and for a minute during the scene when he went off by himself, you could see old Morgan, clear Morgan. There was nothing they could do because poor Ben bled out. Again, he got shot in the leg, near an artery, not a vein. Veins bleed out a little bit slower, but arteries, once they start bleeding, they keep going and going and going. Really, he would have survived if he could have had surgery. He would have had a bigger chance. But unfortunately, in the zombie apocalypse, surgery is not an option unless you have a doctor, and the only place that has a doctor is, and I mean a doctor that could do this, or at least they did before the doctor died, was the sanctuary. So fortunately, rest in peace, Ben. And I was really emotional and sad, and I completely understood Morgan just, you know, going off in that scene. And a lot of people were saying, oh, he's going crazy, he's going crazy. No, he wasn't going crazy. The thing was, he had dealt with so much loss. He dealt with the loss of his wife, his son, and now Ben, who he looked to as a son, ended up getting killed, and it really, really broke him. And if you see the animal in the background, that is my cat, Paris. So, Morgan seemed like in one part of the scene that he was about to kill himself, but he stopped himself, and he just started going through the different events that happened in his mind, the whole training with Eastman, the clear scene, all of it. Alrighty, so Morgan ended up putting 2 and 2 together once he kicked some sort of yellow container, and what was inside of that container? But I believe that was a honeydew melon, because I think that's what he was giving, or Ezekiel was giving the saviors. It was either a watermelon or a honeydew melon, but it looked like a honeydew melon to me for some reason. Anyway, Morgan started to put 2 and 2 together, and he remembered Richard's gun comment to Ben about put your gun up or point it up or something. Anyway, Morgan came into Richard's room with that yellow container, and Richard was just like, it was supposed to be me. He was going to give his life to show the saviors that he meant, or the kingdom meant business, or whatever lie he wanted to come up with. And he started talking about how the kingdom has done nothing to stop the saviors, and he told the story, Richard told the story about how he lost his wife and his daughter, and unfortunately in this scene I have a little sympathy for him, because all I could think of was that whole plan that he had to lead the saviors to Carol's house, and he had little sympathy for that, and he deserved to get his butt kicked by Daryl, and he deserved to unfortunately get killed off in this episode after he did what he did. So anyway, we see Nabila, and she is putting something in a barrel, and Ezekiel's looking at her, and that's when I realized, because in this episode, Ben started talking about a girl that he liked. So we see Nabila, and she's throwing stuff away in this big barrel with the rest of the garden crew, because I'm assuming they went through the whole idea that she was telling Ezekiel about having to cut things and burn stuff away to kill off the weevils, because obviously they don't have any pesticides anymore. Not any they can get to, or that are probably within a mile's radius. So Ezekiel's looking at her, and that's when I realized that Ben, who had been talking about this girl that he liked, was talking about Nabila. And I felt even sadder after hearing about that. So Richard also talked about a plan to Morgan to take out the saviors, and he told Morgan that he has to kill. In other words, Morgan's whole all life is precious thing has to go out the windows, because someone is going to have to die. And I'm just like, yeah, Richard, you. So at the second meet, while the kingdom mites are waiting, Morgan asks Richard on the side, he pulls him to the side, and he said, did you tell Ezekiel what you did? And Richard's like, no, we'll tell him later, or I'll tell him later, or something like that. And to make a long story short, all of a sudden Gavin and Jared and the Saviors show up. And once Gavin learns that Ben died, it appears that he's sad to hear that news, and he basically tells old crusty long-haired Jared, and he's not crusty because he has long hair, he's just crusty and mean and evil. He tells Jared to walk back to the sanctuary, so you already know that Jared, once Gavin gets back and tells Negan what happened, Jared's in big trouble. So Richard takes it upon himself to present Gavin the final melon, and he tells Gavin, you know, we the Kingdomites get it, we get what you are talking about, what you want us to do, blah, 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 blah. All of a sudden, Morgan takes his stick, knocks the hell out of Richard, and then chokes him to death, bashes his head against the pavement, and I'm just like, bye, Richard, but at the same time, I'm like, damn, Morgan. Oh my goodness. And he just keeps going, and Ezekiel's screaming like, Morgan, stop, and he's choking and choking and choking the life out of Richard. And once Richard dies, Morgan tells the truth to Gavin and everybody else. He says that Richard set all of this up. It was all Richard's fault. Richard hid the melon when they stopped. And so pretty much Gavin looks scared as hell. I don't think, honestly, on a side note, that the Saviors will be messing too much with the kingdom after Morgan's display, because Morgan looks pretty scary to the Saviors. Gavin was just like, alright, okay, we'll see you guys next time. Kind of backs away from Morgan, a little bit freaked out. I don't blame him. I would have been freaked out too by this dude as well. Because don't forget, Morgan was all life is precious at one point, but I knew once he killed that Savior to save Carol that that part of old Morgan was going to come back. And once Morgan started killing, he was going to really start killing and kicking butt. Okay, so when the Saviors left, Ezekiel and the rest of the knights were just out of it, and Ezekiel couldn't believe it, but I guess he had to believe it after Morgan said what he said and did what he did. He tried to talk Morgan into going with him and the other knights back to the kingdom, and Morgan just basically told them to go. He said it loud and he yelled, so Ezekiel was like, okay, and the other kingdomites were like, or the knights were like, okay, we're going, and they left. Alright, so Morgan put down Richard before Richard could come back as a walker, and then he buried him in the grave that Richard dug for himself. And Morgan found Richard's daughter's backpack, the one that said Katie on it. And if I remember correctly, I think he put it in the grave and then finished burying it. Okay, so Morgan comes to Carol's house. He's all bloody because before he could head back, he had to take out a teeny little herd of walkers, and he did so with his stick, kicked butt, and took names. Basically, he told Carol, listen, or he asked her, do you want to know the truth? And Carol's just like, okay, and he tells her all about Alexandria, how Negan killed Abe and Glenn, and basically how some other people died. He didn't mention what happened to Eugene, but she'll pretty much find out about that because there's just a lot to tell Carol. And once she heard about the deaths, she was just very emotional. He explained to Carol also that he killed Richard because Richard got Ben killed. And that scene had me all choked up. And then Morgan is about to leave and Carol keeps blocking his way. She tells him, you can go and not go. The exact same quote that Ezekiel said to her earlier in the season. I believe that was episode 2 when he told her that. So Carol enters Alexandria and she goes straight to Ezekiel, who is sitting with Ben's little brother. That poor kid, on a side note, lost his father. Now he lost his brother. I feel so bad for that kid, but at least now he has Ezekiel and the rest of the kingdom to take care of him. So Carol tells Ezekiel, I'm going to be here now. She said, we have to get ready to fight. We have to fight, basically. And Ezekiel says to Carol, yeah, we do, but not today. And then Carol joins Ezekiel and Ben's brother, and she starts helping them plant seeds into the ground. And you can see that the ground is still kind of smoking because, again, the garden crew had to basically cut everything that wasn't infested with weevils and then burn the stuff that was. So they have to start all over. And at the end of the episode, we see Morgan with his staff, and he is cutting the end to make it into some sort of spear. So Killer Morgan is back. He's definitely back. I don't think that Morgan lost his mind, but I think that Morgan will be a part of this fight. Does this mean that Morgan is going to die? No, because I heard a rumor that actor Lenny James allegedly has some sort of clause in his contract where his character can't be killed or something to that effect. I don't know how true that rumor is, but even without that, I don't see Morgan being killed anytime soon. However, we do, on a side note, have to worry about Rosita and Sasha. And I say Rosita and Sasha. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this review. Unfortunately, when I started it, I was alone, and then poof, this big old lioness pops up and decides that she wants to sit in and listen to me do this review, and then faloof, this big old black thing pops up too. So you all take care, and I will be back to review 24 Legacy. I am 2 episodes behind in that review, and I'm going to try my best to get that review done either today or tomorrow and catch up this week and do another Walking Dead review. And there may be another surprise this week. I don't know. It depends on how I feel. But you all take care, and I can't wait to watch tonight's video. Or tonight's episode, actually. So, until next time, I love you guys. Bye, guys. Say bye, Paris.